Hey Demon Heads, Zach here. We're going to try something a little different today. So I have a question for all you Demon Heads, a favor really. If any of you guys are using Facebook as your main form of social media, and if you're listening to the podcast on Facebook, go ahead and tag a friend in this one. And
I think they're following
the
us.
reason you're going to tag them is this is someone you want to start a Twitter
Get to
war
the car.
with. This is somebody that you want to have an exchange publicly that diminishes both of your reputations.
That's casting out demons.
Hey, Demon Heads.
Hey guys,
This is Zach,
I'm Bailey,
and this is a podcast by the name of Casting Out Demons.
a comedy horror podcast made from our blood, sweat, and fears.
TM pending.
Woo! So this is we're slowly crawling up
This
a
is
mountain.
this is our Halloween week. How's it going, guys? How you guys getting spooked out?
Woo!
You guys missing any ice cream places that you used to love?
Stop.
Stop.
So anyway,
I got the obligatory Bailey stop out of the way early, guys. So
yeah, let's stop at the.
let's go ahead and what movie are we talking about today, Bailey?
So today we're talking about Event Horizon.
Event Horizon, a sci-fi movie from 1997. Yes, 1997. Do you want to start with your trick or tweet, or shall I?
I want to.
Go ahead. She's very excited about this one, guys.
Suck it, Mars. Neptune has a gaping hellscape.
That's pretty good. It's relevant, too, because I think Bailey's referring to the fact that Mars was recently discovered to have water upon it.
Yes, I am.
And more news broke today that that these traces of water are showing that the lakes on Mars were probably around long enough for there to have been life. So they can almost say with certainty now that there was, in fact, life on Mars at one point. So there you go, there you go, David Bowie. There's your answer. My trick or tweet. It won't exactly make you want to take your eyes out, but it'll get close, and for all the wrong reasons.
So to start off, Zach hated this movie.
I hated this movie. It sincerely might be I think it is definitely the worst movie we've reviewed so far. And it may be the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. The only thing redeeming about this movie is a 3-second snippet that is kind of scary.
I actually like this movie.
Fair enough. Teach me why I should like it. Because I got the overwhelming sense from reading a lot of online that I should like this movie. But it was so boring, Bailey.
Well, see, I like it just because I like, if you read, like, into a lot of stuff, and then also, I'll go ahead and start out with my Satan Pizza theory. I think that this is actually some sort of space training exercise, because it would make sense if it was just one elongated psych eval, since when you go into space, you have to go through a lot of psychiatric testing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's the first lens that I view it through, is that actually that at the end of the movie when the rescue team comes in, that's not actually that why there are multiple pods is because they're all actually there, and it's just a huge psych eval test, because there are too many decisions in the movie where it's very just like yes or no. You know what I'm saying? We're going to do this or we're going to do this. This is the right thing to do. This is the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, and it's never the right thing to do.
Exactly.
It's one of the reasons I don't like it. The plot is kind of repetitive and boring, and like it's one of the most extremely predictable movies I've ever seen in my life. The fact that I don't know that the Dr. Weir character is like so attached to this ship and everything, and it's just, of course, he's the evil one at the same time, the one that's able to withstand what he saw in hell and wants to bring everybody to hell because he made this ship that's able to go. Just the whole premise of that is really, really ridiculous as well, that he's able to. I understand it's sci-fi, it's science fiction, it's not supposed to be scientifically accurate. But, at the same time, I just found myself scratching my head and going, man, this is really, really stupid. And the dialogue isn't good enough for as bad as the plot is, and it feels like it's not even good enough for a really shitty video game. Every single episode of Goosebumps there ever was 10 times scarier than this. I've literally been way more scared at the opening credits of Goosebumps than this movie ever made me feel.
I don't know. I like it. I think there's a nostalgia value to it, because I really do like this movie. And I mean, it is a movie from when I was younger, and also I hate the movie. If you know me, there are a couple movies that I hate watching, and Hellraiser is one of them. The original Hellraiser scares the shit out of me. Like, period.
Yeah.
End of sentence. I won't. I hate watching it.
Yeah,
One
that's
of my
one
friends.
of the. They kind of say that it's very similar to Hellraiser. I've never seen Hellraiser.
Well, see, and that's the thing is, I was like, it always kind of reminded me of a Hellraiser I could actually watch.
Okay.
And it turns out that Paul W.S. Anderson actually, a lot of Hellraisers, like he relied heavily on Hellraiser. As
He
an
relied
influence.
heavily on a lot of movies for this movie, and to the point where it was borderline ripping them off.
Well, see, that's why how like the whole engine is like a puzzle box. That's to pay homage to Hellraiser, like how it's a
Okay.
puzzle.
And the whole scene with the blood filling up and then pouring out is just like the blood coming out of the elevators in The Shining. A lot of people call this movie The Shining in space, which is giving it way too much credit.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that's a very bold statement, but I don't know. It's one of those movies I've just always kind of liked because it's, in my opinion, I think it's sci-fi horror done pretty well. Not like
It's like
on a whole nother level. I don't feel like it's on like a huge level, but I feel like that it's done adequately well.
yeah, it just feels like, I don't know, like a sci-fi original movie that they got Lawrence
I know.
Fishburne to sign on to.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know.
I think it's Lawrence Fishburne's worst role he's ever done, and I think he did a horrendous job acting.
Well,
in this
I do
movie.
like that it's not like outlandishly futuristic.
Yeah.
Because it's set in. So to kind of give you the premise, the movie's set in 2047, but 7 years prior, this ship called Event Horizon was sent into space, and it's apparently like it was the most catastrophic space disaster. So then they sent in the Lewis and Clark ship to kind of look at the remnants and try to rescue the crew and see what's going on because no one really knows exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And so they send the Lewis and Clark, and so we have Dr. Weir, then we have Lawrence Fishburne's character,
And can
who
we
is Miller.
Yeah, can we say the way that Dr. Weir is introduced is one of the most, like, I don't know, cliche intros to a character there ever has been. Just him waking up from a nightmare and grabbing his picture and going, "Oh, Claire." That's fucking dumb. Like, I'm sorry, but I've seen that a trillion times, and like the audacity you have to start your movie with like the most important character in this movie is Dr. Weir, and to have him start off with just such it immediately, like from that moment on, it's like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to sit through the rest of this. And the lines, in my opinion, just didn't get any better. Just really cliche, over the top. Of course, you're gonna fucking say that lines.
I just love it. I'm just more entertained by Zach's reaction to this than I am the actual movie. So
Well,
I just
yeah,
think it's funny to sit back
I'm
and
more
watch.
entertained by watching a leaf roll across a field of leaves.
Because this is not Pet Cemetery, which I will, no pun intended, defend to the grave.
Yeah. Well, Pet
This movie I have
Cemetery.
less
Pet
of an attachment
Cemetery had the fact that it had an interesting story going for it. This had an interesting idea, not an interesting story. The idea of having a spaceship. It's like Ghost Ship, but in space. You ever seen that movie Ghost Ship?
Yes.
Where there's a ship that was sunk and there's ghosts on it. It's very reminiscent of that movie.
So anyway, so we have...
Now, I do want to say, as scathing of a review as I am giving this movie, I understand that like 30 minutes were cut by the studio because of time constraints. It was redeemed superfluous gore, and the first cut of the movie was what Anderson wanted to use the most. I cannot understand the level of like having your movie mess with that much.
Yeah.
And like just in recent time, the Fantastic Four movie that just came out, getting scathing reviews, and the director is claiming that the original cut that he had was far better and made a lot more sense. And man, I sympathize. Well, what's the one where you sympathize? Is the one where you don't empathize. I empathize with you, but at the same time, man, like there's no reason dialogue should ever be that shitty. You know what you're talking about when we talked about the devil a couple weeks prior. The devil, Bailey pointed out, whenever the reveal that the old lady is Satan, and then the dialogue that Satan takes on is just really generic and boring. Imagine that, but stretched over this entire film.
Okay, so let's get to the plot.
Let's talk about the plot.
So the plot, they go to try to salvage the remains of Event Horizon, and so you have a whole crew. We're introduced to a whole crew of characters. Sorry, my allergies are terrible, guys. So you're introduced to a whole crew of characters, and so we kind of find out that the whole rescue mission is Dr. Weir created the ship, and the ship is like his rosebud. He just
That's
can't
a
let
really
go.
yeah.
And so he So they're like, okay, so here's what you're in for. Here's what's going on. And so we find out, like, we get little video messages and stuff from the prior crew. And at first it seems fine, but then
Yeah.
there's some weird interference and some, like, hellish looking images.
Yeah.
And so one of the crew members says the Latin translates to save me.
Yeah. And this, another fucking dumb plot point. I understand Latin's a dead language, and if this takes place in a future setting, it's a really dead language. But fucking take your time and fucking translate something correctly if you're going to claim to know what it is. And to have the plot turn happen where he's like, dude, I think I got the translation wrong. It means save yourself from me and hell.
Save yourself from hell, yeah.
Yeah, fuck that, man. I'm sorry, that's really fucking dumb. Like, that is insulting to my intelligence. That's the big twist. Like, oh, we could have not gone if I'd gotten this right. But now that everything's gone to shit, I know what it means, dude.
And so anyway.
Oh my fucking god.
So then they all start kind of having these hallucinations, which are very graphic, very gory. They play off of, like, so we have Peters is actually a mom, and so she like can watch little video diaries like we've seen in Interstellar. And so it's like her watching her son's birthday and seeing her family.
And I will give this movie credit for like predicting what we think space travel is going to be like now. It got it pretty accurate.
It's not outlandishly futuristic.
Yeah.
That's what I like, where it's not like, which one of my favorite guilty pleasure movies of all time is Demolition Man. Like, I freaking love Demolition
I've
Man.
never seen it, but I've heard good things
Yeah, it's
about
like
it.
Sandra Bullock, Wesley Snipes, and Sylvester Stallone. And it's not like outlandishly futuristic. I feel like it's very, like, it's very
Cyberpunk.
reasonable. Stop. It's very reasonable. And so,
And that's it. Like, that's the only thing that I like about it.
oh my gosh. So anyway, so they wind up having these really, like just graphic hallucinations of just dying and, like, hellish things. And so,
she sees her. If we're talking about the
Peters
character, she sees her son a couple times throughout the movie as well, and that's what eventually leads to her death. So, I mean, I don't know, man.
And so, so then we're also introduced to Justin, who is the youngest member of the crew.
You might recognize him from Idle Hands.
Yes.
It was what was his name in Idle Hands?
Randy.
Randy. Yeah, Randy from Idle Hands.
And so he has this maternal connection, he and Peters do. They call him, the whole crew, his nickname is Baby Bear.
Yeah.
And so they deploy a couple people to go out and kind of explore the event horizon. So what happens next, Zach?
So they're trying to get on the ship, and they're sending people out, and I think Justin's the first one that goes into it, and there's like this whole thing about Dr. Weir he's like, I have to be on the ship. He's like, no. Lawrence Fishburne's character, Captain Miller, is like, no, you stay here. These are my orders. We need you here, blah, blah, blah.
Because they're talking about, Dr. Weir talks about how the easiest way to get from point A to point B is when things are parallel as opposed to going just straight, like taking a straight course.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
they send Justin through, and Justin gets sucked into what's like a black-looking mirror thing.
It's like, if you've ever seen the movie 13 Ghosts, is that what
Yeah.
it's called? 16 Ghosts? What are the number of ghosts there is?
Yeah.
And there's like that thing that spins around, and Monk has to jump through it to save the girl from American Pie. That all makes sense, right? You understand what I'm saying?
I actually surprisingly know exactly what you're saying.
So it's like that, and it's like this thing that's constantly turning over itself, and it's like these three magnetic things going around, and apparently that's enough to create a black hole that makes the parallel space
Because
travel
that's
possible.
what the whole concept is, that there's black holes that can take you through to certain universes or certain points
Yeah,
in
and that's
time.
what you see that in Interstellar as well, but done in a way that's not really fucking stupid. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hate Interstellar, so that's also...
You hate Interstellar.
Yeah, no, I don't like Interstellar.
That's right, I forgot about that.
So...
That's so weird to me.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So...
I mean, it's no Event Horizon, but, you know.
Stop. So Justin winds up getting pulled through, and they have to hurry up and pull him back, and he's just severely...
And the person that pulls him back is Cooper,
Yeah.
not my cat. Cooper is he pulls the cord that's tied onto him, pulls him back, And he describes what he sees to Dr. Weir later on and to Captain Miller. And Dr. Weir is like, that's ridiculous. That would never happen. Blah, blah, blah. I built this ship. Blah, blah, blah. This is my shit. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then he's like, dude, don't tell me what I didn't see. I saw this shit, and like there was like a black hole, and there was liquid.
Yeah. And so Justin's almost comatose at this point. He's like almost catatonic when he comes out.
Yeah, and then he's saying, he's mumbling something along the lines of the darkness. And so this has the entire crew kind of like freaked out. And I just want to take a moment to kind of interject here, because I was talking earlier, Bailey, about how the movie, the director Paul Anderson, not to be confused with Paul Thomas Anderson, had his copy stored somewhere, because like after the movie came out, it was a bomb domestically. It was a $60 million budget, only brought in $40 million in revenue, so that's considered a blockbuster bust. And I know at the time, I think it's Paramount was trying to release the movie because I forget what the entertainment company that had Titanic was, but they wanted to get a blockbuster out before Titanic so it didn't have to compete with Titanic. So they kind of hurried this along, and they were he's supposed to be granted 10 weeks to edit, was only granted 6 weeks to edit. So as a result, the copy that we have is complete and utter just a bag of boiled dog shit. And that's what this movie is. And like I said earlier, it's like, the movie has potential. It has a really good idea. But good ideas does not make a movie. You have to have execution. And I don't know. I just can't fathom. And maybe this is limitations of my imagination more so than anything else. But I can't fathom having a movie with that shitty of dialogue and that shitty of character development, that shitty of scares if it's supposed to be a horror movie, and almost blatant ripping off of other movies. Almost The Shining, Alien, The Thing even, which is a movie we reviewed before, and 2001 A Space Odyssey. It's like he just stole like certain parts of those movies and it was just like, oh, I don't have to work on the characters. I have these other movies that have been successful and I can just fucking rely on that shit.
I mean, what if it's just one giant clip show, like one giant horror movie clip show?
If
like
he was gonna make
if
he was gonna make a remix, then fucking call it a remix. Call it what it is. And there is a fine line between paying homage and ripping off movies. If you need to learn how to do that, watch any Quentin Tarantino movie, and you'll fucking learn how to do that the right way. But what I'm saying is, like, I can't see how, now that the movie is bombed and Anderson has said, well, it's because it's not my cut, I don't see how 35 minutes of a movie that was already too long could have made that much of a world of difference. And I can't see his vision of what he thinks he made through the cloud of shit that this movie is.
Okay, so anyway, back to the
sorry
plot.
to be so. The cool part about this is that Trey Parker and Matt Stone credit the film as the inspiration for the woodland creatures. And have you seen that episode with the woodland creatures who have blood orgies in the woods?
No.
They credit the scene where the crew, the images whenever they see the images of the Event Horizon group when they're having like the fucking, like they see hell, so they're having like blood orgies and shit. That's where Trey Parker and Matt Stone got the idea for the woodland creatures.
Yeah,
and they've been on record saying that. So that's the only good thing about this movie.
Okay, so anyway.
Continue with the plot.
So the plot, so Justin's almost catatonic. They're trying to figure it out. So then Peter's hallucinations get worse and worse.
Yes.
And so do the other members of the crew. And so then we kind of figure out that the Event Horizon is clearly, like, it knows things that no other person knows. Lawrence Fishburne, actually, on one of the crews, actually lost one of his people.
Yeah.
Because they
Caught on
couldn't,
fire.
the ship caught on fire and they couldn't reach him in time.
You ever see fire in zero gravity? It's beautiful. It's like a wave. It's like water. And they kept hitting him wave after wave. Cool. Anyway, so continue.
So he finds out, he's like, I've never told anybody. He pulls DJ aside, and he's like, I've never told anybody that, and it knows things that we don't tell it. And so the thing that I think is kind of cool is that the actual, like, why everything's circular, there are 9 circles in all of the scenes because it's to represent Dante's Inferno. So, like, that's kind of cool stylistically.
Yeah.
So anyway, so like I said, the hallucinations get worse and worse, and then we kind of find out Weir's backstory, which is that his wife killed herself. Sorry, his wife committed suicide because he just completely worked on this ship and was just so obsessed with this ship and just like reaching other dimensions and seeing what was out there. And so we
Shouldn't
find
have been
out
married, man.
we find out that he winds up that she killed herself
Killed herself in a bathtub.
Yeah, and so
they made that happen just so there could be nudity in this movie.
yeah, basically. So then we have Lieutenant Stark and Cooper, and they're trying to figure some stuff out.
And there's a little bit of sexual tension between these two characters. One line that is, I don't want to call it funny. It's there's some attempted humor in this line. I think it's worth mentioning. Amongst the other lines in this movie.
When he brings her the coffee.
Brings her the coffee.
Like, "Want something
like,
strong and black in your life?"
And then she's like, gives him the finger, and he's like, is that an invitation? She's like, no. He's like, well, then how about some coffee then?
Yeah.
Ooh, repartee. Ooh.
Oh my gosh, stop.
It's a little bitter for my taste.
So, I'm trying to think of where I am. So Parker has her hallucinations about Danny
And
singing in
then-
the tent.
Yeah, and then Peters sees her son on the examination table, and it just says "mommy" creepily. And then there's
And then Justin winds up going into the chamber, I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head, but Justin winds up going where there's pressure.
yeah,
I can't think of what it's called to save my life. And so they look, and he's like, if you'd seen the things that I had seen, you wouldn't try to stop me. And so Lawrence Fishburne gets him at the last minute, but I mean, he's lost a lot of blood at that point because there's just so much pressure.
blood pouring out of his eyes and everything. He's just trying to kill himself.
And so they get him stable. Mm-hmm. They wound up opening the door because he was possessed, and so he wound up making the door where it couldn't be disabled from the outside at all. He's completely just enabled every security lock.
So it has to be Lawrence Fishburne coming back in to grab him and pull him in.
And
They
get him
eventually
stabilized.
do save his life. He actually survives the entire film. But I want to say that there are a couple of constants that this movie has that are, I don't know, maybe if they cut these constants out and went with a little more variation, that it could have at least had a little bit more of credibility in actually having the audacity to call this a horror movie. There's really truly nothing scary about this movie for the most part, and there's like this constant thing of Dr. Weir walking around and hearing whispers. What is his name? Is it Henry? Is that right? Henry? Let's call him Henry Weir. And it's like Henry.
I'm not sure. Demon Head's up making orange chicken.
Yeah, Bailey stepped away to eat some dinner. It's been this is the third episode we've done today, but so there's like this constant horror movie trope of that happening. Then he keeps having dreams about her, where she has her eyes closed for the most part. Whenever she opens them, they're black. And at one part, he screams, and it's like the worst, just overacted and just.
It's like.
Yeah, it's more of a gyration than it's like his vinegar strokes.
That's what I was about to say.
It's his vinegar strokes more than a scream, and then he wakes up from the nightmare. And I don't know. It's just these constant, just. It's like it's like the director Paul Anderson read a book on how to write a horror movie and just followed it to the letter, and just completely left out the parts of what horror movies are supposed to be about. And it's supposed to be about ambiguity and what takes place off the screen, what takes place in the viewer's head, and what lies in the shadows, for lack of better terms. But everything is in the forefront. Everything is just in your face scares, and he tries to just lift things from other movies that have worked before, and it's just it's just lacking a creative edge that is, I don't know. It's almost depressing to watch this movie on how bad it is. Like, I was genuinely upset and that I had to sit and watch this movie to completion. Like, I was really bummed out about my life in that moment. Like, that's how bad this movie is, in my opinion. And I don't know, man. To get back to the plot, the Justin character is stabilized or whatever.
And then Peters is the next up to go.
Yeah. So Peters is they're having like a plan. What's the plan at this point?
They're trying to get, because they need
trying
more oxygen.
Yeah,
so they only have enough for like 20 hours.
Yeah, and at this point in the movie, I think they're down to 4 hours, right? Mm-hmm. And so Peters is they're getting all this oxygen. They're bringing it back to the ship, right? That's
To
what
the
they're
Lewis
doing.
and Clark.
To Lewis and Clark, and
They're trying to get resources back to the Lewis and Clark.
and they're going to take that to leave. And so they're it's Peters and I think it's Cooper. They're down near the heart of the ship, grabbing all the oxygen and everything. And then Peters is running away. Cooper is already gone. And then she looks back, and of course she sees her son. And like a fucking idiot,
She runs and gets impaled.
well, she falls off the top of the
Yeah.
thing and then falls onto the near the heart of the ship. And then this is the point where there's like this part where Dr. Weir is walking away from Captain Miller and says, "We got to get home." And he's like, "I already am home." And it's just kind of like, what the fuck ever, man. It's just
Yeah. And so he walks and he sees Peters and he like is legitimately concerned.
yeah. See, that's another thing. If you're gonna make Weir this character who is evil, and I understand that that's really supposed to be followed through with whenever he actually has the encounter and sees hell for himself. But that line with Miller before that, Captain Miller, kind of just shows that he's already supposed to be evil. It's like the movie can't
Yeah,
make
it's
up
kind of
their
like
mind.
a foreshadowing.
Yeah, but it's unnecessary
Yeah.
foreshadowing because every character is going to become like that whenever they see hell. First of all, secondly, this movie goes back and forth on what Weir is throughout the entire movie, and they never land on anything. So he's just kind of left as this ambiguous blob of a person that really has no purpose other than he's the one that built the ship, and it's fucking boring. So he says, "I am home." They're gathering these things. Peters chase after her son that she knows isn't there,
And so she winds up dying.
and then Weir comes up and sees her, and he's.
And then the next to die is Smith.
Smith, who is on board of the.
No, that's...
Oh,
Is it Smith or DJ?
I forget.
So Smith winds up dying because Weir winds up rigging everything to explode.
Yeah, so he's back on the Lewis and Clark, and he's like, "I got everything fixed." And then he finds the bomb finally because
It's like
there's
5 seconds left.
And then he's
yeah.
just like, "Fuck!" So he dies.
Yeah, he winds up having... He's actually the only religious character.
Yeah.
He winds up praying and dying. And then...
Yeah.
So then we cut to... Weir at this point has had a vision of his wife.
Yeah,
And she's gouged his eyes out.
yeah,
Because apparently this is a direct quote, "Where we're going, you don't need to see."
yeah.
And
Isn't
so-
that the fucking stupidest line you ever heard?
So his wife winds up gouging his eyes out, like in this vision, when
Yeah.
after he finds Peters. So then he finds DJ, and Lawrence Fishburne tells him to take out Weir, like to kill
Yeah.
Weir.
And then as soon as he says that, Weir gets him before.
Behind him
Yeah.
and winds up cutting him open. Apparently this scene was supposed to be a lot more
Yeah.
graphic, and apparently DJ was supposed to still be alive. And Miller was the one that was going to have to kill him. Like, he
Oh,
turns
wow.
his head to see Miller,
Yeah.
but they said it was too much, so
Okay.
they cut
See,
it.
I mean, if that's the stuff they cut from the movie, that doesn't make it a better movie. I mean, it makes it more gory. It makes there maybe like to have a scene where Miller is like having, because his whole thing is he doesn't want to have another crew member die, and to have him have to put one out of misery is kind of an interesting thing to play with. But at the same time, it doesn't make it a better movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so anyway,
Sorry to keep harking on
so
that.
then Miller finds DJ,
Yes.
and he has like a scar that
Yeah.
goes like from sternum, I guess, to like pelvis, and
Yeah.
so Weir slices him open, and all of his guts are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then, damn it, and then, so then Miller tries to go find Weir because at this point, Stark's been rendered unconscious,
Mm-hmm.
and Cooper's on the outside of the ship trying to get back in because they sent him
Yeah.
out to go get some stuff.
So whenever the explosion happens, he's sent off into
He's catapulted,
space.
yeah.
And he's tethered onto this hunk of metal. And this is another really fucking dumb part of the movie. Just his dialogue with himself. He's like, "I gotta get back to the ship. I gotta get back to the ship. I gotta get back to the ship.
Why does this
How
always
do I-
happen to me?
Yeah, how do I do this? Aw, shit. Aw, shit. Oh, no, man. How do I get it? Well, what if I reverse my oxygen thing? This has to work. This has to work. Oh, it's working." That's like literally almost verbatim. You hear how fucking stupid that is, Demon Heads? That's like the most over explanation. Just show that shit. Show that shit. Don't fucking like show and tell and like voice act your way through this shit. Have a real scene. Have some balls as a director that what you're doing with the camera is interesting enough to tell a story instead of just having this over explanation and fucking just what's the word I'm looking for? Whenever you have a character that just exposition, just like, oh, let me explain what's happening here because you guys are all too fucking dumb to. That's the biggest problem with this movie is that it insults anyone who watches it intelligence.
So anyway, so Miller finds Stark, and they're being chased by Weir.
Yes.
Who now has no eyes, as we said.
Yes.
And so he gets Stark. He uses some smelling salts to wake up Stark. So they try to escape. And then they wind up at one point. He gets through the door, but she can't. And so she can't get through because the zero gravity's been put on.
And so there's like this door that's closed, and they're like, it can't be Weir, can it? So it opens, and then Cooper comes through it, right? And Cooper's like, what, y'all thought I was dead or something? It's like something really cliche like that. And it's just like, all right, and this guy's back now. So let's continue with the movie. So they run through, and they're like, their whole plan now is to, because Weir told them at the beginning of the movie that there are these bombs.
And there's an escape pod on the Event Horizon. They want to disconnect the ship and get back home. So
they're going to detonate these bombs on this bridge that connects the escape pod to the actual Event Horizon. So they go back to the escape pod, and at this point, they realize that one of them is going to have to go onto the actual Event Horizon to detonate the bombs.
And so Miller,
of course, volunteers. Damn it, if one of my crew members is going to die again. So he volunteers, he goes. And then at this point, Cooper and Lieutenant Stark are left on the escape pod. And then Stark is doing Cooper is doing something. I forget exactly what he's doing, but he gets it done. Good for him. And, and then blood starts dripping on him. And he's like, blood? Well, where's that coming from? And he looks up, and the lights fixtures start filling with blood.
Basically, like every sort of like fixture starts filling with blood, and so it actually catapults Stark down a shaft.
Well, I want to point out that there's a scene where Stark looks at this glass thing filling with blood, and then it erupts, and it's almost shot for shot from The Shining. It's like, I don't know. I mentioned that earlier, but it was frustrating to watch. Not even if he was just paying homage to it, don't pay homage to such a great movie and such a shitty movie. Like at that point, you had to know that this was a shitty movie, and then you shouldn't be paying homage to arguably the greatest horror movie ever made.
God, so she falls through, but luckily he and Cooper grabs her.
You can call him Coop. That's what I call my cat.
Coop. Winds up grabbing
Scooper.
her.
He scoops
her
her up.
So then we have the final showdown between Weir and Miller. And he tells Miller, because at this point he's like, they've killed, quote unquote, killed Weir.
Yeah.
But he couldn't stay dead. So at this point, basically, he just has a bunch of like lashes all across his skin.
Yeah.
And he tells Miller basically that his crew's in hell.
Yeah.
And so he shows a bunch of like scenes and flashes of them getting tortured. Mm-hmm. And Miller's like, my crew's not in hell. He's like, no, but they will be.
Yeah.
And so...
And then there's like that dude that he burned is like a constant thing. He's like, you burned me alive. Sets him on fire.
So that's how Weir shows up for the showdown. Yeah.
Sets him on fire. Then luckily there's water in that room. So he lands on water and that gets put out. And then there's that whole showdown. He's like, your crew's in hell. I'm not in hell yet. And then he says something. God damn it. I wish I remember this because it was so cheesy.
And so he winds up...
Detonating the bomb
and sacrificing
Of course,
himself.
on this one-liner that he's like, well, not done yet, or something like that, or, well, yeah, something, I don't know. Yeah. So, just imagine the cheesy lines that you got in the 90s and the late 80s in your movies, and right before the hero presses the button that detonates the bomb. Like, that's how generic and cookie-cutter that is.
So, that winds up happening, and Cooper and Stark wind up getting out and just putting themselves in sleeper chambers, along with Justin, who is stable.
Yeah.
So they're in there for like 72 days. It's like something insane.
Yeah.
So finally, we start out as Stark getting rescued, and then her rescuer's there, and he's like, it's going to be fine.
And then takes off his mask, and it's weird.
And so then she wakes up again as Cooper's comforting her and saying that the rescue crew's here, that they're going to be fine.
But then the door closes, then it's kind of ominous. It's like maybe that what she saw in her dream is actually about to happen.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. That's fucking dumb. It's and I understand maybe they're trying to say that they blew up the Event Horizon, and subsequently the heart of the ship was sucked into the planet of Neptune. Right? That's what happened with that shit. Apparently Neptune at any time could just open up and suck in a ship. And then, whatever. We don't know anything about Neptune, so maybe. We know stuff about Neptune, but we don't know as much as we know about other planets and dwarf planets like Pluto. There's some exciting things going on with Pluto here lately. I don't know if you've heard about that. There's frozen lakes. There might be life on Pluto. That's something I'm serious.
Oh.
There are frozen lakes that might have warm enough water underneath the surface that could support life. So
That's awesome.
What the fuck? What's going on in the world right now? Much more exciting than what's happening in Event Horizon, I'll tell you that much.
God.
And just the whole trope of fucking having a dream that's like, and then you wake up and of course it was just a dream. Like, come on, man. Come on, man. That's so fucking dumb.
So anyway.
I had to make an after-school special once for my school. This is a true story, by the way, Bailey. And it was supposed to be raise awareness about drinking, for underage drinking or whatever. And I had this completely done. I showed it to the principal, and there were people dying in it. It was really sad, because she told me to be as realistic as possible, and she said that she wanted to show the adverse effects of alcohol. So I had 2 people die in it, and she was like, "That's too dark. What you need to do is make the girl wake up from the dream." I was like, "The dream? This isn't a dream. It's supposed to be reality." And she's like, "No, you need to go back and shoot someone waking up and going, oh, it was a dream." So I had to go do that. I had to shoot, and then them waking up so it was all a dream, which got laughs at this assembly. So this showed in front of the entire school. That's what I'm saying. Whenever you have that shit, have some balls. And if you're going to have him show up, because that's still a part of the Event Horizon, hey, maybe that's not that bad of an ending. You have him show up, there was no escape. That's kind of dark, Maybe that moves it up a little more into respectable territory, and not where it's...
I just zoned out that area.
No, it's totally fine.
Cheat, I already did mine.
Yeah, totally fine. And so the point of the matter is, you have a serious subject like teens drinking and dying, and then you completely discount it. Then you have a serious thing like maybe the fate of humanity is sealed at this point, and if you have this ending. But instead you have her waking up from a dream and screaming, which is something that happened at the beginning of the movie with Weir whenever he first came out. And it's just the cyclical effect of that. I get the idea there. That's the thing. The movie had ideas, but it didn't follow through with any of them. It didn't stick to any of them. It didn't stick to its guns, for lack of better terms, and it came out with it's like a bad pancake that you take out of the pan before it's done, and it's like runny in the middle, so whenever you pick it up with your spatula, it drips off and it just breaks. And it's just like, oh well, let's put this in front of people and they'll look at it. And that's what people did with Event Horizon. Not enough, because it was a bomb. And now it's like kind of looked at as like, I read somewhere that said it's one of the greatest science fiction movies of all time. I don't understand that. I don't get that. I don't get why that's the status quo. I don't understand.
I mean, I think it's a pretty good movie.
Okay. Can you, and this isn't me like coming at you or anything, but try to explain to me very briefly why it's a good movie, because I don't get it.
I just like it because I think that it plays a lot off of just despair and darkness, and just, I don't know, I enjoy watching it. I think that it's
well, I get that there's
a good
despair
movie.
and
Like,
darkness.
I mean, I don't think it's like
but it toys
cinematic gold, but I just think that I think that it's really cool about diving into space and the final frontier, because we aren't really sure what all is out there. We're just now in 2015 trying to figure this out, and this movie's set in 2047, which is a very logical time to be doing the exploration that they're doing.
Yeah, I mean,
And
honestly,
so I
we're...
think it's just kind of cool that it plays around with the idea that we don't know what's really out there, and it plays around with the idea also that a lot of times with humanity, our curiosity is our downfall.
And I don't know if you heard about this. Today, SpaceX said that they're going to have an announcement pretty soon, and a lot of people think it's a mission to Mars that they're going to be having very soon. So, yeah, if we're going to be going to Mars in the next 5 years, like, not that ridiculous anymore, considering everything we know about Mars, by the year 2047, maybe we're going beyond going to Mars. Maybe we're going to explore other planets like Pluto, which is a dwarf planet, not technically a planet, which is beyond Neptune. So maybe, by the year 27, we have a manned spaceship that gets to Neptune. I don't really see the logistics of it, but I understand what you're saying.
I mean, I just think it's a fun movie to watch, just grab some popcorn, hang out. It's one of those movies that I just don't dive too deep into because it's not, I don't think that it was meant to be like some prolific movie. It was just meant to be.
But if you're
like,
going to be, that's what I'm saying. I understand that. But if you're going to be referencing movies like The Shining, Alien, and if you're going to be referencing Dante's Inferno, or Dante, whatever, the 9 levels of hell that you talked about, then maybe have some fucking, something below the surface.
I don't know. I think you're reading just a little bit too much into it because I just don't.
But that's the whole point, Bailey. There's supposed to be something you can read into. That's what art is.
I know. But think of there's at least one of the movies that I love. It's my guilty pleasure movie is Legally Blonde.
Yeah.
Do I watch Legally Blonde because it's a great cinematic movie? No, I just
absolutely
watch it because
not.
it's a lot of
I
fun.
watch Legally Blonde for the same reason. It's a very fun movie. Bend and Snap is fucking hilarious. I will totally give you that. Absolutely.
I don't know. I just.
But I will argue that Legally Blonde has more beneath the surface than Event Horizon does.
I just think you're reading a little bit too much into it. It's not meant to be
that's the whole point of the podcast is to read into it.
But I just think you're getting yourself a little worked up about nothing.
Well, then what am I supposed to get worked up about? I mean, this is the whole point.
I don't know.
Supposed to get worked up, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I take it for what it is at face value. There are some movies that you dive into and that are meant to be analyzed, and there are some movies that you just take at face value, and this is a movie that you just take at face value. Yes, it's very reminiscent of other horror movies.
It's a busted face if you're taking it at face value.
But there are, I don't know, I take it at face value. I'm like, okay, I know what I'm in for. I know what I'm getting into. Mm-hmm. I don't watch it to analyze it. I mean, for the podcast, yeah, but I don't watch it to get, to a deep, thought-provoking conversation about. I just take it at face value. Can I
counterpoint something? Because me and Bailey talked about this movie briefly before the podcast, and Bailey watched it around the time that it came out, correct? Mm-hmm. So you watched it with a much younger mindset than I did. I watched it for the first time the day we
I didn't watch it when it first came out. I watched it. I was 18. I was 17 18? Or 18. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't super young.
But you still hadn't even been in college yet. You hadn't gone through.
Yeah, I was my freshman year of college.
I don't get to watch movies at face value anymore. You know what I mean? I don't get to do that.
Yeah, no. I mean, I just think that it's yes. Does it borrow from other movies? Yes, but it's for me, horror movies sci-fi original movies. I just rewatched the movie Boo. Mm-hmm. Which is not a great movie, but I take that at face value. I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch something that is just over the top and goofy, and it's just a goofy, over the top sci-fi horror movie.
But I don't think.
But if I want to watch something thought provoking, I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna watch Night of the Living Dead, which is a thinly veiled metaphor for racism.
Absolutely.
Or I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch Halloween because Halloween is horrifying. Event Horizon's something hey, I have some time before work. I want to watch a horror movie. Okay, I'm going to put on Event Horizon. There's a difference. I don't go into it.
And I totally agree and respect where you're coming from. But whenever you're talking about a movie that deals with the fate of humanity, it deals with the essence of black holes, it deals with the idea of visiting hell, I don't think that those things are... I think the director was trying to give you something that was thought-provoking, was trying to give you something that was more than was below the surface, and definitely not a movie that was meant to be taken at face value.
Well, I mean, that happens a lot with horror, though. It's very hard to get a point across. And
absolutely.
So if you could at least achieve cult classic or just something that's still talked about, 5 or 6 years after, and I mean, this is still talked about almost 10 years after.
Well, it's 15 years after.
20 years after.
Yeah, almost 20
I just think that, because, Paul W.S. Anderson... This is what he dabbles in. It's Mortal Kombat, the Resident Evils, which I love the Resident Evil series.
Yeah, I
love
like
it.
the Mortal Kombat movie. That's a movie that's meant to be taken at face value. It's a video game adaptation. And it's just, oh man, look at these really cool fight scenes. Oh, they're the characters that I play with my favorite video game. Oh, the acting's not extremely shitty. Okay, it's a good movie. But this movie, it was supposed to be a blockbuster smash hit. It was supposed to, and they gave him all this fucking money, and he came out with a really bad product.
I don't know. I like it.
Fair enough. I was trying to, if anything, I was trying to prod you to make me like it a little more, but it still just didn't happen for me.
Yeah, no, I just think that it's not even though the subject matter is supposed to be thought provoking, I don't think the movie itself is supposed to be thought provoking.
Interesting. Okay.
Because it's like Jurassic Park, for example, huge blockbuster hit.
There's some thought in there. It deals with capitalism and everything.
But I mean, for Jurassic Park though, that's not why I watched Jurassic Park. I watched Jurassic Park because I'm like, I want to watch some really cool dinosaur stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm like, if I want to watch something thought provoking, I'm gonna sit down and watch Requiem for a Dream, or I'm gonna sit down and watch The Breakfast Club.
Yeah, but
I'm gonna watch something that has like a lot of intrinsic value. Event Horizon does not. That is not what is conveyed to me at all, and I think that's why it's achieved a cult classic standing. Is because yes, it's supposed to be like serious subject matter, but it didn't come across that way. So it's like, let's look at this as a goofy, over the top, sci-fi horror quote unquote blockbuster.
Yeah.
And not just take it as something more. Just take it for what it is. Yes, was it supposed to be a blockbuster? Yeah.
I just feel like,
was it supposed to be a huge over the top picture? Mm-hmm. Yes. But that's not what happened, so I'm like, it's just kind of rolling with it, and that's how I take it.
I don't know, and to me, and that's great. I just feel like that's lowering the bar of expectations to mediocrity being okay, and honestly, and if you're gonna have a movie, I don't think that you should be okay with mediocrity. I mean, this movie doesn't even achieve, in my eyes, mediocrity. I think it falls well below mediocrity. And I don't know. I totally understand where you're coming from. I have movies that are that way, but they tend to be more comedic and thus kind of, I don't know, more readily explained as to why it was over the top and goofy. And I think that anything that is over the top and goofy in this movie is unintentional. But that's just two philosophical, like, standpoints on this movie, and both are equally valid.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just how I take it. I don't take it as anything more than like, yes, did it fail? Yeah, but I mean, like, I take it in the same vein as like Starship Troopers and things like that. Like, that's what vein I take it in, is that at the time it was supposed to be serious, and a lot of times when you're working with a movie, you're like, this is so serious, and you take a step back and you're like, this is so goofy.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, it's goofy. We're just gonna roll with it, and that's how I take it.
Absolutely, completely valid.
So.
What would you change?
I would put back some of the cut material. Mm-hmm. I know that it was allegedly too gory or whatever, but I think that it would add a little bit more, especially in the horror vein, because this walks the line of horror and sci-fi, and it kind of peters back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I think that would definitely define it as horror sci-fi and not just like sci-fi horror, or like kind of sci-fi kind of horror.
Yeah, sci-fi with a little bit of a twist of horror in there.
Yeah.
What would I change? I wouldn't have stored the film anywhere near where they stored it, and I would have released the first cut. I know that probably Paula Anderson didn't really have that much of a say in it, but I mean, at least have it now. I mean, if you really cared that much about it, you would still have some of it. Apparently, there is a copy of it. I don't know if you read that much into it. One of the guys that worked on the film has a VHS copy of it, and Paul Anderson said he'll watch it sooner or later to see if it was really as good as he thought it was. And I don't know if he's done that since, or if he's ever going to do it, but the latest I read on it, he was going to watch it. But recasting out demons, who do you got?
So I have for DJ, Ewan McGregor.
Okay.
For Smith, I have Christopher Maloney. For Weir, I have Jason Bateman.
Okay.
Miller, Idris Elba. Peters, Parker Posey.
Okay.
Stark, Janine Garofalo.
Okay.
Justin, Michael Cera. And for Cooper, I have Hannibal Buress.
Interesting. For me, as Captain Miller, I have Chiwetel Ejiofor. I'm doing a terrible job pronouncing his name, but he was in the movie The Martian that recently came out. I think he did a great job. I would love to see him in a role where he was like the main character, and I think Captain Miller and Dr. Weir are arguably interchangeable as the main character. Mm-hmm. I have Sam Rockwell as Dr. Weir.
Okay.
Will Poulter is Justin, the guy that's going to be playing Pennywise.
Mm-hmm.
I have Kathy Bates as Peters. I know that they don't look the same at all, but I think Kathy Bates kind of encapsulates that motherly, matronly role that Peters was supposed to stand for. I have Olivia Wilde as Lieutenant Stark.
Okay.
I have Michael B. Jordan as Cooper, and I have Jason Statham playing both the other two characters, DJ and what was the other guy? Smith. So just have Jason Statham. One, he's wearing a wig, and the other time he's not.
God.
Be interesting. My rating, I give it a 3.9 out of 10. I'm sorry, this is the version that we get. I do admire the lengths the movie wanted to go to, but I despise where it ends up going.
I'd give it a 5.8. Just because I think, like I said, it's just something fun to watch with your friends if you're just into like just a goofy sci-fi horror movie. It's perfect for that.
Maybe I should try watching it with some of my friends to see if I get that same effect. I will do that, maybe. I just can't picture a scenario other than that I'd ever watch this film again.
Oh my god. Okay, so now that we've done all that, it's time for some bone plugs and harmony.
Absolutely. I'll be having a podcast coming out. Maybe it's out already. Yeah, it should be at this point. Yeah. So check out my podcast that I do with my brother. It's called Truly. It's a current events podcast with a little twist. It has a little history lesson in there for you too, you demon heads. You won't be called demon heads in that show though. I don't know what you'll be called. And me and my brother are working on a script. Hopefully we'll be pretty far along by the time you hear this, and maybe we'll begin principal shooting in 2016 sometime. The movie's called Fixed. It deals with a character who's either building a time machine or a coffee pot, and he doesn't know which one. And it's about him trying to go back in time and a friend of his that's trying to tether him to the present to show him that that's all there is. So there's that interesting dichotomy that I'm working with. Hopefully it won't be as big of a flop as Paul Anderson would make it. But I have a Twitter handle, and today is you pick it. You pick whatever you want it to be. So you hit the @ symbol, and you just let your little mind go wild and type in whatever you can think of. There's an infinite world behind your eyelids and inside your mind. And I challenge you as a listener, as a demon head, to go explore what's in there and see what's rattling around between your ears and come up with something a little creative. But I know ultimately you'll be a little upset because no matter how creative you get, that's already my Twitter handle, and I already beat you to it.
God. Okay, so I'm on Twitter. I'm at Bailey McLeod. I also have a blog. Nobody puts BaileyInTheCorner.wordpress.com.
I have a question for you. Do you write for Hello Giggles?
I do write for Hello Giggles.
Yes.
Have some really cool stuff coming out that I'm really excited about.
Yes.
And also thank you to Jackson King for our intro and outro music. And also thank you to Lauren Cecilia Mims for our cover art.
That's great.
For more of her stuff, check out her online portfolio at laurenceciliamims.com. And thank you to Zach for the original scores.
Hey, you're welcome.
Yeah, so I think that is everything, Demon Heads. Like I said, we are probably balls deep in Halloween week.
Oh, it's so spooky. I'm so glad it got colder.
Me too. I'm so glad that I finished my Halloween costume.
Me too.
So, yeah, I think that about does us for this time.
Hey, thanks for listening, Demon Heads. Thanks for bearing with my disdain for this movie. And thanks for Bailey for understanding the disdain and holding it in regard to her opinion and walking back and forth between my hatred and her kind of ambivalence towards the movie. And it's always fun to have a conversation that doesn't end in an argument, and it invites discourse where people can understand the other person's opinion and maybe see something from a perspective. And maybe that's a lesson we all can learn as people, that it takes time to sit down and have a conversation with somebody where your goals aren't the only thing that are important.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of this podcast.
And remember, ghosts have feelings too.
The sequel.
Casting out demons is all that you have left. Look around, there's nothing. It is created by Bailey McLeod Perkins, starring Bailey McLeod Perkins and Zach T. Busby. Original music brought to you by Jackson King. Original cover art provided by Lauren Cecilia Mims. It is edited by Zach T. Busby, and the score is also provided by Zach T. Busby. Waves of UV light shining through the sky in the form of raindrops, poisoning the ground beneath. Is that a flower growing? Is that a tree bursting from the soil? Or is that you growing into who you were always supposed to be? You were always supposed to be somebody else.